And that's what gives this car so much character, is that it is kind of a wild child. It feels like you're walking a dog that is full of energy and is easily distracted. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Shifting Lanes. My name is Hanson, and for this video, you find me sitting in the 2022 Hyundai KonaN. This model is finished in the racing red paint with the black interior. There's no options in here, so the price with delivery is just under $36,000. And in this video, I want to share with you my likes and dislikes about this subcompact SUV and tell you why this is the craziest car that Hyundai makes. Let's start this review with the outside first. This is a small car. This is a subcompact crossover. The wheelbase is only 102.4 inches. That's shorter than a Veloster N. And visually speaking, this looks a lot like the Kona N line, but it has some bonuses. Both the Kona N line and the KonaN shares the same front and rear bumpers, and also, if you notice, the wheel arches are color matched. However, the side skirts are a little bit unique because this one has the letter N on it, just like the other N vehicles, the Veloster N and the Elantra N. And around back, you'll find what really sets this apart, and that's the dual exhaust and the bigger wing type spoiler. As for the wheels, this thing has 19-inch wheels wrapped in some really nice Pirelli P0 tires, and this also has the N branded calipers. And finally, as for the paint, this is the racing red paint, which is unique to the KonaN. So all in all, this subcompact crossover doesn't look too bad. I would rate this an 8 out of 10. It looks sporty, but not too wild like the Elantra N. It looks fun to drive, but I would not be embarrassed to drive it. How would you personally rate this out of 10? Next, let's talk about technology, because this thing is packed with a lot of tech. Starting with the 10.25-inch wide aspect ratio touchscreen, this thing comes with built-in navigation. It comes with the N-Grin control system, which means that you can modify a bunch of aspects of the car just like other Hyundai N cars. For example, you could tune the engine, the steering, suspension, transmission, the limited slip differential, and also your stability control and your exhaust sound. This thing also comes with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, albeit it's still a wired connection. And if you look through the steering wheel, you could find another 10.25-inch screen. That's a fully digital instrument cluster. And as you change drive modes, it can also change the gauge styles. And you could display a lot of information on there. And if you go into N mode, the important stuff becomes front and center, like your tach and your gear position. And there's some other nice tech bonuses too, like a wireless charger, and the Harman Kardon speakers sound pretty good. And as for the safety sensors in the car, there's a lot of them. There's blind spot monitoring system, there's rear cross traffic alert, and as for the driving assistance stuff, this thing has a pretty clever lane following system that you could press right over here. It also has a frontal collision avoidance. The only thing missing out of this car is that it doesn't have an adaptive cruise control system. So overall, in terms of technology, I would still rate this a 7 out of 10 because there is still a lot of tech given the money that you've paid for this car. But it's still missing some of the nice to haves like a wireless Apple CarPlay system and also all of the other safety features like that adaptive cruise control. Next, let's talk about the interior. The first thing I noticed is that there's a lot of plastics in this car. So this looks like a proper economy car. However, the important bits feel pretty great. For example, there's the leather wrapped steering wheel. The paddle shifters feel like they're made of metal. The buttons are tactile, so there's no touch sensitive stuff. And then the seats feel pretty good. It has some leather bolsterings and it looks like there's some Alcantara on it. Although I wish that this KonaN has the seats from the Elantra N or the Veloster N, because that looks a lot more premium, and I like the fact that it has the letter N that lights up when you turn the car on. As for cargo space, when you open up the back hatch, there's 19.2 cubic feet of space right behind the second row. Fold the second row down and that space grows to 45.8 cubic feet. As for rear legroom, there's not a lot back there at 35.2 inches. There's 52.2 inches of hip room, so that's going to be very tight with 5 people. This is a subcompact crossover after all, so it's not going to fit a ton of people comfortably. So overall, in the interior department, I would rate this a 7 out of 10, and that's primarily because of material choice and the lamer looking seats. So now I'm switching seats to find out what really makes this car the craziest car that Hyundai makes. And let's talk about power next. There's nothing out of the ordinary for this N car. It's powered by a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that makes 276 horsepower and 289 pound-feet of torque. And as expected, as other Hyundai N cars, this comes with a lot of those extra bonus features like the NGS button. Now, with other N cars with the dual clutch transmission, you have this N grin shift functionality. Basically, this will give you an extra 10 horsepower for 20 seconds. This is an overboost function. It's going to allow the turbo to operate at a higher pressure so that you can make that last minute pass. It feels a lot like a nitrous boost function in your video game, and it's a whole lot of fun. There's also this feature called NTS, or N-Track Shift Sense. It's going to change the transmission logic so that you stay in the power band for a little bit longer. When you hit the brakes hard, it's going to downshift. And lastly, there's the NPS, or N Power Shift. When you have the throttle pegged more than 90%, this is going to shift much faster and harder. This way you have a better shift response and you lose less momentum when you're upshifting. So all of this is pretty crazy compared to other cars, but is par for the course for other N cars. What really makes this the craziest car that Hyundai makes is the fact that all of that N performance is packed into a subcompact crossover, the Kona platform. So you can do 0 to 60 in the low 5-second range. That's quick and on par with other N cars, but the fact that this is done in a subcompact SUV makes it even crazier. So power-wise, I would rate this an 8 out of 10 because this is one of the quickest subcompact SUVs that you can buy right now. And when you start driving, you can tell how crazy this car is. First of all, the sound is crazy, just like other N cars. It pops and crackles when you lift off throttle, and when it shifts hard, it's an insane experience. And when it comes to the 8-speed dual clutch transmission, this thing shifts really quickly. It's unfortunate that there's a stop sale going on right now because there's a recall affecting these 8-speed dual clutch transmissions. So cars like the KonaN, the Veloster N, actually no more Veloster Ns, but the Elantra N, there's a recall campaign going on. The next thing you should know about this car is that there's a ton of torque steer. That is a concept that you're going to be very knowledgeable of if you own this car. Basically, this is a front-wheel driver. It is disappointing that this doesn't have the all-wheel drive system that you could find out of the N line. So just like other front-wheel drive cars with a lot of power, this thing is going to be pulling left and right when you really step on it. And that's what gives this car so much character, is that it is kind of a wild child. It feels like you're walking a dog that is full of energy and is easily distracted. Thankfully, the steering feels pretty good. There's still good communication and feedback between you and the road. There's also other great things that improve the handling. For example, this thing comes with an electronic limited slip differential. Basically, you'll be able to put more power to the outside wheel, so you're going to be cutting down on those lap times. I also like how there's an adjustable suspension in this car, so you can go into your N-Grin control system and you can modify how stiff you want the suspension to be. Next, let's talk about the ride quality. It's not great. The fact that this has a really short wheelbase, it's lightweight, and it has somewhat of a stiff suspension, the ride is not very good. And especially if you have it in this N mode like I do right now, I'm just bouncing everywhere. So in the handling department, I would normally rate this an 8 out of 10, but I'm going to knock it down a point to 7 out of 10 because this has a ton of torque steer. So personally, I think this gives it a lot more character, but it can be really annoying when you're trying to drive fast because this thing almost has a mind of its own. So in the end, I'm going to apply some fudge factor here and give this car an 8 out of 10. Basically because this is the craziest car that Hyundai sells. I think it's crazier than the Elantra N, even though that looks insane, and it's also crazier than my Veloster N. Oh yeah, I do have my own 2020 Hyundai Veloster N that comes with a manual transmission. This Kona N has all of the crazy features that you could find in other N cars. It has the same powerful power plant, but given the fact that all of it has been packed into the Kona platform, which is a totally sensible subcompact crossover. The behavior and the attitude of this car is just completely bonkers. There's so much torque steer on this thing. There's wheel hop, there's a lot of squealing. This is a lively beast, and I am just in love with it. Let me know your thoughts. If you've learned something from this video or found it entertaining, please consider hitting that like, hitting that subscribe, and also that notification bell button so that you can be notified anytime we make a new video. Let's wrap it up right there. This has been the 2022 Hyundai Kona N. My name's Hanson, and I will see you in the next one.